Killer couples. Case 1. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the Moors murderers. Ian Brady grew up in Glasgow, the illegitimate son of a waitress who couldn't care for him. He was placed with a foster family in the Gorbals, one of the most deprived areas in Britain, and by his early teens, he had already appeared before juvenile courts for housebreaking. When he moved to Manchester as a young man, he was working a clerical job, reading Nietzsche and de Sade, and spending his evenings on his motorcycle, riding out to the empty moorland north of the city. He told people he wanted to commit the perfect murder. Nobody took him seriously. Myra Hindley was born in Manchester and raised in a household shaped by her father's violence. She was a quiet, devout Catholic girl who had taken the death of a childhood friend badly. She converted partly from grief. In January 1961, she started a new clerical job and met Brady. Within months, she was completely under his control. She learned to shoot. She read the books he gave her. She began to believe, as he believed, that conventional morality was a weakness designed to hold people like them down. What made Brady and Hindley so dangerous, and what made the Moors murders so disturbing to the British public, was the precision of their partnership and how deliberately each role was assigned. Hindley was the lure. She drove the car. She approached children and teenagers with the calm, trustworthy face of a local woman, asking for help finding a glove on the moors, offering a lift home. Nobody suspected a woman. That was the point. Brady would be waiting. Between July 1963 and October 1965, they murdered 5 children. The youngest was 10 years old. Pauline Reed was 16. Keith Bennett was 12. John Kilbride, 12. Leslie Ann Downey, 10. Edward Evans, 17. They buried the bodies on Saddleworth Moor. In Leslie Ann Downey's case, they photographed her and recorded her on audio tape as she begged for her mother. They kept the recordings. Their downfall came from inside their own circle. Brady made the mistake of trying to recruit Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, into their world. On October 6, 1965, Smith arrived at their house and walked in on Brady murdering Edward Evans with an axe. Brady handed him the axe and told him to finish it. Smith was horrified. He went home, told his wife, and called the police from a phone box at 6 the next morning. What investigators found at the house, the photographs, the audio tapes, the carefully mapped burial sites, shocked a nation that believed it had seen everything. At trial in 1966, the audio tape of Leslie Ann Downey was played in court. Journalists wept. The public gallery fell silent. It remains one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence ever presented in a British courtroom. Both received life sentences. Brady was later moved to a high-security psychiatric hospital where he spent decades on hunger strike and died in 2017, having never expressed remorse. Hindley campaigned for release for the rest of her life, claiming Brady had manipulated her. She died in prison in 2002, still serving her sentence. Keith Bennett's body was never found. His mother spent the rest of her life searching the moors. She died in 2012 without an answer. Case 2. Bernard and Karla Homolka, the Ken and Barbie killers. They looked exactly like what people imagine a happy young couple to look like. Bernard was tall, blonde, charming, an accountant from a respectable Scarborough family. Karla Homolka was bright and pretty, working as a veterinary assistant, close to her family. Their wedding video shows them laughing, dancing, surrounded by people who believed in them completely. Behind that image, Bernard had already been attacking women for years. Between 1986 and 1990, he carried out a series of rapes across Scarborough, stalking women from bus stops, following them to their front doors, attacking them at knife point. Police had composite sketches that matched him. Friends had even reported his name as a suspect. He gave a DNA sample voluntarily in 1990, confident the lab delays would protect him. They did, for 3 more years. When Bernardo met Karla in 1987, she was 17. She later described the relationship as immediately overwhelming. He was confident, dominant, and she fell completely into his world. What investigators and the public would only learn years later was how quickly she became an active participant rather than a passive victim. In December 1990, Karla used veterinary anesthetic she had stolen from her workplace to drug her own 15-year-old sister, Tammy, unconscious. as a gift for Bernardo. Tammy died that night, choking on her vomit while they delayed calling for help. Her death was ruled accidental. No one suspected the couple sitting in the living room. That death, rather than stopping them, removed a barrier. In June 1991, they abducted 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey, who had been locked out of her house late at night. They held her in their home, assaulted and tortured her over hours, filmed everything, then murdered her. Her body was dismembered, encased in cement, and dumped in a lake. One of the concrete blocks surfaced on the day of Bernardo and Homolka's wedding. 10 months later, they abducted 15-year-old Kristen French from a church car park in broad daylight. Witnesses saw a blonde woman approach her beside a car. Karla was the lure again, another woman, appearing safe. Kristen was held captive over an Easter weekend while the couple attended family dinners between assaults. She was murdered before they returned her. Unlike Mahaffey, she was never blindfolded. Prosecutors later argued that meant she was always going to die. The case collapsed from the inside. In January 1993, Bernardo beat Karla so severely she was hospitalized with 2 black eyes and broken ribs. Her family intervened. She left him, and then, through her lawyers, she began talking to police, presenting herself as a battered spouse who had lived in terror. Prosecutors, believing her account and desperate to convict Bernardo, gave Karla Homolka a plea deal, 12 years for manslaughter in exchange for her testimony. She signed the agreement. Weeks later, police found the videotapes hidden in the house. The tapes showed Karla's enthusiastic and active participation in the crimes, including the assault on her own sister. The deal was already done. It could not be undone. Bernardo was convicted of first-degree murder in 1995 and declared a dangerous offender. He has been denied parole every time he has applied and remains in prison today. Karla Homolka served her full 12 years and was released in 2005. She changed her name, moved to Quebec, married, and had 3 children. She is living freely. The plea deal became known in Canada as the deal with the devil. The prosecutor who signed it said it was the worst decision of his career. Case 3. Fred and Rose West. 25 Cromwell Street. Fred West grew up in rural Herefordshire, in a household where dysfunction was so deeply embedded he later spoke about his childhood without any apparent awareness that it wasn't normal. He left school at 15, barely able to read, had 2 serious head injuries in his teens, and was first arrested for assaulting a young girl when he was 20. His family refused to testify. The case collapsed. He walked free. Rose Letts was 15 when she met Fred. He was 27, already a convicted thief with 2 children from his first marriage. Rose came from a troubled home shaped by her father's violence. Social services tried to intervene in her relationship with Fred. She kept going back. Fred was imprisoned briefly in 1971 for theft. During that time, Rose was left in charge of his young daughter Charmaine from his previous marriage. When Fred was released, Charmaine was gone. Rose told neighbors she had gone to live with her mother. Forensic evidence later showed that Rose had killed the child while Fred was still in prison. Fred came home, concealed what had happened, and they moved on as though nothing had occurred. That exchange, one covering for the other, immediately and without hesitation, defined everything that followed. At 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, between 1973 and 1987, they murdered at least 9 young women. The victims were hitchhikers, runaways, lodgers, young women who had answered an advert for a room. Rose was the friendly face, the approachable woman at the door who made people feel safe. Fred managed everything else. The bodies were buried beneath the house and in the garden, concealed carefully enough that they remained hidden for over 2 decades. Their own daughter Heather, who had grown increasingly distressed as a teenager and had begun confiding in friends that she wanted to leave home, disappeared in June 1987. Fred told the family she had run off. He made dark, offhand jokes about her being under the patio. Nobody outside the family knew what that meant. The case broke open in 1992 when concerns raised about the family reached police. Investigators quickly noticed that Heather had no paper trail at all, no employment records, no benefits claims, no confirmed sightings by anyone outside the immediate household. Every explanation Fred and Rose offered contradicted the last one. In February 1994, police obtained a warrant and began excavating the property. They kept finding remains. Fred was arrested and initially tried to take sole responsibility, insisting Rose had known nothing. As the evidence mounted, that story fell apart. He died by suicide in his cell on January 1st, 1995, before the trial, taking with him whatever full account he might have given. Investigators believe there are victims connected to the couple who have never been identified. Rose went to trial in October 1995. She was convicted on all 10 counts of murder and received a whole life order, meaning she will never be released. She has not expressed remorse. The house at 25 Cromwell Street was demolished in 1996. The site is now a public footpath. There is no marker. If this was worth your time, hit like. It makes a real difference to the channel. And subscribe if you want more cases like these. There's a lot more to come.